Very warm welcome all. The lucky few who actually managed to make the cut and make it into the room. As you can see, it's quite cozy. Again, we were oversubscribed, which is fantastic. So yeah, really good to see you all here. My name is Chris de Koning. I run Founders and Funders together with Michael Collier, who you saw earlier downstairs. The intention of these meetings is very much for you to meet each other. We put on some fantastic speakers as an excuse to draw you in, but really the intention is that you get to meet and chat with me today. I've got Benny and Nicola. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Without further ado, please help me in welcoming Benny to the stage here.
Thank you, Chris and Michael, for the invitation to come and to speak tonight. I think it's really apt in that OSE, Oxford Science Enterprises, bridges both the founder and the funder role here in the Oxford ecosystem. So thank you. I figured I would do 5 things with you. So the first one is I'll tell you a bit about who I am. I'll talk about what Oxford Science Enterprises represents here within the ecosystem. We'll talk about some of the latest venture capital health tech trends, what I'm looking for at Oxford, and then we'll open it up for any questions that you might have. So foremost, I'm a father, husband, and community leader, and my kids see me as this hairy, big-hearted man that's trailed by noxious gases, and my wife assures me that there is pictorial accuracy in the depiction, although I question it. I do a number of things to stay healthy, so we love to travel, and usually you'll find me with my nose in a book. I announced today via LinkedIn post that my friend Emma was telling me that I should mention that today is the 25th anniversary of my breaking my back in a ski accident. So it was an L2 compression fracture and a shattered piece of my spine. And so over about 6 years, I made a full recovery and joined this world champion breakdance team here in the middle. So went from not potentially being able to walk to that. And so just pushing through, being resilient and challenging my own boundaries. And so some of the other things that I really enjoy are Peloton. That was the best purchase I made during the pandemic in 2020. Before my kids were born, I knew how stressful it was going to be. And so I have twins, a boy and a girl. And so I started transcendental meditation, and I do that every day. And was also an ocean safari guide off the coast of East Africa years ago in a different life. And then I think if we're in this room, we all have some element of privilege. And so I try to give back by donating my time to a number of different causes. And so I'm a mentor within the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Program and various programs here at the University of Oxford, the Masters in Digital Health, Oxford Edge. I do work with the Masters of Health Administration at Dartmouth and a variety of other organizations like MIT. So that's a bit about me. In terms of the healthcare experience, I've been very fortunate to work across the world on 6 continents. And most recently, I've been supporting a handful of early stage startups, mostly in the US. So organizations that are pre-seed, seed, Series A, as they think through strategy, governance, operations. I did spend a period of time in Canada. And so I was a leader among a team that took a company from Series A when I joined as a consultant all the way through an IPO and then sailed to Sun Life, the biggest health insurer in Canada. 13 years ago, I was involved with the privatization of healthcare within the Middle East. And so was in and out of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And then have also been involved with spin-outs from different universities. In Australia, for example, eHub Health is a mental health platform that I also acquired several years ago. So every decision that I've made in my own journey has always been predicated on a perceived ability to positively impact the health and the well-being of other people, hence why I'm standing in front of you today in Oxford and why I've moved my family back here, which we'll come on to. So Oxford Science Enterprises, or OSE, is the world's single largest university venture builder. We, in 11 years, have brought £3 billion and change to the Oxford ecosystem. And that's been invested by OSE as well as 300 plus co-investors. We have a global shareholder base of 70 investors, so sovereign wealth funds, some in the Middle East, some in Asia, foundations, trusts like the Wellcome Trust, and then other venture capital funds all invest at the top co level. We had the day I started was very exciting. We had the internal announcement of our first unicorn. So Oxford Ionics is a quantum computing company that we have subsequently sold. We have one new company that's being built every month on average. And we're anticipating that we'll double that velocity by 2030. By 2035, I think there'll be £5 billion that is invested in university startups from Oxford every single year. So that's a forecasted number that we have. And we're also anticipating that our portfolio will represent 0.6% of the UK's GDP. And so I truly believe that the first $1 trillion company that is a university startup spin-out will come from here, and OSE will play a role in building that. We have a portfolio of 120 companies, and we've had 5 exits of significance, returning more than £500 million to date, with a long tail of 50 plus more to come. So in terms of venture capital trends that I'm seeing, in Q3, we've seen a really healthy rebound in venture capital funding. And so Q1 was 4.4, Q2 was 4.1. So a little bit of a leveling off, but in aggregate, this is more than all of 2024 in aggregate. So I think that sends a really healthy message that funding is starting to flow. We're also seeing median valuations up. So last year, the valuation was roughly 33.5. And so part of this is, and we'll talk about the expansion into AI, but that's really driving up valuations across the sector. We see an all-time high in the number of businesses that are being sold from a VC perspective. So 42 is the most in any quarter. And a lot of these are liquidity-driven events where small organizations realize that they probably can't IPO, they're running out of runway, and many VCs are looking for quality and not quantity. And so there's a lot of exits, either via acquisition or sales in the treasury and the secondaries markets. There's been a significant pause in the IPO window, and that's started to reopen. So we saw it in 2020 and in 2021. And then it closed again. And in the last year in the US, we've seen Omada has IPO'd. And so I anticipate in 2026, there'll be another reopening of the IPO window, and we'll see organizations like Maven and Spring Health come to market. So AI continues to be the belle of the ball. And the top 3 here are globally focused. The bottom 2 are more health tech related trends. In 2025, we've seen more than $200 billion in global funding go into AI startups. So this is nearly 60% of all funding is going into AI. And this is really led by mega rounds. And so we're seeing OpenAI take a $40 billion round. We're seeing Anthropic take 13. So lots of capital going to very few bets. Q3 is a continuation of the trend. 63% of US VC dollars go to AI, 53% globally. And then when it comes to venture fund raising, this metric is way down from where it was in 2022. So there's a clear bifurcation where I think you're either on the AI bus or you're off. And so this is not indicative of what we call dry powder, that's undeployed capital that sits in the market. There's still a lot of undeployed capital, but it's going to fewer funds, just as it's going to fewer AI companies. So the bottom 2 here are really focused on health tech. And these are things that I'm seeing in the market now. The first one is an application for reduction in clinician burnout. And so when we think about things like ambient scribes, that in essence is the physician sitting with the patient and opening a recording tool and allowing the tool to transcribe the conversation and then port that data into the EMR so that the physician can spend, or the allied health professional can spend time really engaging with the patients, the person-to-person piece. So that is one of the use cases where I think it's low-hanging fruit, and I think it's easy for large systems or the NHS to support. The second one, which I think is really notable to mention, is related to revenue cycle management. And so this, in essence, is financing that's tied up within organizations. And so in the US especially, we have a lot of automated denials from health insurance companies. It's a very high number where it's a bot, it comes in, and then it gets automatically denied. And the insurers will make a lot of money if they just, even from a working capital perspective, if they don't pay those claims on time. And so many people tire of actually resubmitting the claims. It's a massive pain point for CFOs. And so there are tools now that will allow a CFO to go in to adjudicate a claim and basically unfreeze that stolen revenue, if you will. So lots of adoption on the provider side. It's a bit more sluggish on the payer side. But we're seeing now these bot wars playing out where the providers are submitting a claim and the payers are using the bots to deny it. So just a very interesting machination in the market. And then in terms of what I'm seeking, so I'm looking to build a health tech company. As I mentioned, I moved my family back here. It's our second tour of duty in the UK. And I'm looking for assets in the cancer or mental health spaces. And so these are some focus areas. They're not exhaustive. I'm a care delivery person. I am not a scientist. I'm not a researcher, but I know this university is chock full of them and I spend my days talking to them. And so what I bring is really the commercial angle. I spend my time writing business cases, thinking about market entrance strategies, building teams. And so I want to partner with you if you have ideas and world-leading, groundbreaking science that you think can be commercialized. So some of the examples in oncology: navigation, symptom management with wearables. We're seeing earlier presentation of cancer patients. So how do we develop tools to wrap around them for a lifetime? Digital clinical trials, scaling infrastructure to be able to get new medicines to patients more efficaciously. And then on the mental health side, there are a plethora of interesting things happening here in the university. Precision psychiatry, I think, really going beyond a diagnosis, anxiety, MDD, and understanding the phenotype of a patient to develop a medicine that's based on their individual biology. That's what I mean by precision psychiatry. So how do we move beyond those labels and really design drugs that meet your needs? And then I think there is a clear confluence in the Venn diagram between oncology and mental health, that middle section where, as you can imagine, it's quite traumatic if you or one of your loved ones is going through cancer. And so how do we provide psychosocial support for cancer patients and their families? So if this excites you, if you know people who are doing translational work in this space, if you are a clinician or you know clinicians with unmet needs, if there are academics in your network in oncology or mental health, or even if you have ideas or potential introductions, let's talk. I'm here to spin something out and to really, as I mentioned, positively help the lives of patients and people around the world. And so I'm also willing to put money where my mouth is. And so if any of the introductions people make result in the catalyst of a new venture, I'm willing to give you a prize of £500, and you can bank that. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight. And I guess the one thing I'd leave you with is this knowledge that the more that I learn, the less that I know. And so happy to field any questions or to wait until the end.
Please join me in welcoming Nicola to the stage.
Hi everyone, so I'm Nicola McConville. I'm a partner at Mishcon Reya and I head up our Oxford office. But sort of talking about how you spend time, I've also just been approached by John Bell to sit on the advisory board to the WIM. So again, sort of various sort of genomic related discussions going on there. And I'm also a trustee of the Oxford Trust, sort of here in Oxford as well. So, and I also sit as a NED. But for a TTO that isn't in Oxford. So I think, but what I wanted to do today is try and sort of talk a little bit about sort of Mishcon, but actually I hate sales pitches, so I'm trying not to make it a sales pitch. But it's more just to kind of give you a little bit of a flavour, I suppose, of what we get up to and actually how we can help more than anything else. So the other thing I should say is don't read everything that's on the slides. These are really busy slides. The reason being, when I went to our BD team this morning and asked, could I have some slides with some logos, all of our decks are currently embargoed because December is when we update all of our decks, apparently, with all the latest quotes from people. But basically, we're a global law firm. So we have offices in Oxford, London and Cambridge in the UK, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh in the East, and then also a healthy presence in Tel Aviv and also some South American hotspots as well. In terms of how the firm is structured, big real estate team. We act for Brookfield, we act for ARC Oxford, we act for a lot of the big sort of developers. We've got the largest employment team in the UK. But actually, where I think it's interesting, we also have a lot of litigators. So you sort of, when the lawyer, very boring magazine, does their top 10 like legal cases of the year, Mishcon do about 5 out of the 10 of the top leading cases across all areas of litigation. My interest actually sits between private and innovation. So our private wealth team is huge. And we act for a lot of the globally wealthy families. We have significant family office sort of networks that we advise, hence the international network that we have. We have ultra high net worth sort of individuals and access to contacts who have a lot of private capital. What we haven't necessarily done to date is actually really talk about how we can move that private capital to supporting innovation. And I sit in innovation. That's what I do every single day. I work with founders and company and investors supporting innovation every single day. So it's not quite a one-woman mission anymore. There's a whole gathering of us. And part of our actual strategic vision is, as a firm, is to say, okay, we have access to all of this private capital over here and the people with the private capital. We look after their art collections and we look after their divorces and we look after their house moves and all of that sort of thing. But actually, what are we doing in terms of unlocking their capital to come here? When I first had the management team of Mishcon here in Oxford, I asked them what they did with universities, because I come from a firm called Taylor Vinters, and prior to that I was head of tech at Pennington's, where basically I deal with universities every day. So I was like, so what do you do with universities? And essentially we now underwrite a number of pro bono sort of legal programs and legal support. And then I was asked whether I knew where the Blavatnik building was, because we act for Len Blavatnik. And it was like literally nothing in between. Like we do pro bono stuff and we act for people who put names on the outside of buildings. And I was like, and what do we do in between? And so this has now become, actually it's gathered quite a lot of momentum, as you might imagine. But basically we support companies right from the really early stage, like before it's even a company, when it's just a few people with an idea and they're not quite sure what to do with it, and whether they want that to be a charity, a social venture, a collaboration, a partnership, or actually just decide, do you know what, this isn't actually for us. That is all fine. But we literally work for, with people right the way through, all the way through to exit. And you will see when I show some of the deep depth slides that we do, by way of example, talking about AI and investment into AI. Last year, we acted for Wave on their $1 billion investment round, which was the largest investment round into AI in Europe. We've acted for those since it was 3 founders and a shed. I'm told it was a garage, but I like the idea of it being a shed. And equally, like on life sciences, Relation Therapeutics, who last year did the biggest pharmaceutical partnership with GSK, which got announced near enough 12 months ago. Again, we've acted for them since they were in a lab. And so it really is about the fact that we are right there from the very beginning of the journey all the way through with all of the different iterations. So how do we support these companies? How do we sort of think about how we approach these companies at all the different stages? And the way that we do that is by having sort of vertical teams who specialise in various different areas. One of the areas that we have an incredible, like literally nationally and internationally incredible reputation for is actually defence. We act for NATO. And so we have 2 partners who are both ex-military. They have any number of security clearances. They do stuff that we're not allowed to know about, and vice versa. I am sort of invited to meetings where people literally just have initials. But what we are seeing, though, is actually that's been quite interesting with actually where funding is now coming into defence, and companies that 2 to 3 years ago, when we were doing their national security clearances, and they were going, no, absolutely no defence here, nothing to see here, definitely no defence application. Now all of a sudden have a defence application because it's where the money is coming from. So what we're seeing is a lot of pivoting, a lot of moving into dual use. That comes with its actually quite a lot of things that you need to think about, not just in terms of sources of funding, but actually how you commercially contract, and how that is very different from building a life sciences company or a quantum company. It just requires some nuances. Life sciences and healthcare, again, this is like me literally just finding logos for people earlier, hence why it's not particularly sophisticated. You've heard me sort of mention, Relation Therapeutics, Congenica. Again, we acted all the way from the beginning, all the way through to their exit earlier this year. Nucleome, we continue to advise. Quell, we advise on all of their sort of funding and commercial contracts. So yeah, a whole sort of range of life sciences and healthcare and AI. So again, we actually feed into quite a lot of AI policy. So Ashley Williams, who heads up our AI team, who happens to be an Oxford alum, gets pulled in actually to feed into quite a lot of European policy as well as domestic policy. And therefore, again, we have a number of clients that we support, either clients because they are companies that need, sort of our advice with various legal support, or indeed investors who are investing into AI and want a firm that actually understands it. So again, and Featurespace are there. Featurespace exited again $1 billion last year to Visa. Again, we've acted for them since they were a team of people, and then Mike Lynch decided they needed a CEO to come and sort of shake them all around, and he brought in the really amazing Martina Davis, who basically took them. I heard her speak last week, and it was quite interesting that we had Liz Upton, who was the founder of Raspberry Pi, and Martina being interviewed in our office for something, and Liz founded Raspberry Pi, so she was a co-founder of Raspberry Pi, so had been there for the whole thing. Whereas Martina came in actually, sort of reasonably late into the Featurespace, sort of journey when they'd already made lots of mistakes, to quote her. And so, but again, that's just the sort of clients that we have. Other things that we do, we have a founder's handbook that we have tried to make as plain English as possible for all of the things that you might need to think about. And it's really that we have people who come in and it's like, I need to think about my IP, or I need to have a founder's agreement or a shareholder's agreement. But actually, how does that relate into your personal assets? How does that relate into your will? How does it, if you want to go and rent some space somewhere, IP, there's all sorts of things that you should be thinking about. So what we've tried to do is create a plain English guide that is, I hope, reasonably accessible. It's designed to be accessible, but covers all of the sorts of things and there's a glossary in there that lawyers drop into jargon all the time, as do investors. And so what we've also tried to do is kind of put a glossary in there that de-jargons some of the stuff that we take for granted. When we're talking about tax reliefs, I talk SEIS, EIS, I might talk EMI, it's like this world of jargon that it's like speaking another language sometimes. So it's there to try and do that. We also deliver a lot of free training. So we run a program for OUI called Structuring for Success, but actually we are now rolling, we've been running it actually for a number of accelerators. I can say in this room on a Chatham House basis, the next people that we are running this for is GCHQ. Because of our defence side of things. So, and it literally, again, is aimed at, there are a number of things that we can talk about, but what we try to do is make it accessible. So workshops where in-person workshops are my preference as opposed to sort of online seminars. But it can be anything from you're starting a company, what does it mean to be a director versus a shareholder? So that's my call of duties until Epic Games tell me I'm not allowed to call that anymore. And then, worst term sheet in the world. We do, as you said, about 200 funding rounds a year. We see a lot of term sheets. What we've done is we've pulled literally the worst terms from all the term sheets, shoved them all together in one, and we will now do like a whole sort of worst term sheet in the world. David and Goliath, how to negotiate with Big Pharma. Mishcon Plus, so money where your mouth is. Not a fund, because we're not allowed to call it a fund, but we have an element of partner capital set aside. That means that we can invest up to £100,000 into companies. They have to be clients or become clients. And it's an actual £100,000 investment. So this isn't in exchange for fees or anything like that. It's £100,000 into your bank account. Yes, we sit on your cap table, but we sit on your cap table with non-voting shares. We don't sort of barge in and put our elbows out. For us, it's a way of being able to support a sort of an ecosystem that gives us a huge amount of work, but also to be able to we almost create like a little private members club, if I'm honest. Like once you're through the door, there are all these other things that we can offer to you, some special events, some different lives, etc. So that's why we do it. I don't make the decision. We've got an entirely independent and for very good reasons locked down independent investment committee that make those decisions. I can make recommendations, and that's as far as I go. I'm not allowed, and we make sure that you get independent legal advice. That when we say these really are non-voting shares that sit behind everybody else, that really is what they do. And then every year we produce a fundraising report. This is one of the reasons why I had trouble getting slides, because we are literally just doing our fundraising report for 2025. So as I say, we did, 181 transactions that we got our lawyers to report on. So actually that's probably more than that. And, sort of, again, it just means that we have an insight, or I think a valuable, somebody comes to me with a term sheet, I will red flag any term sheet for free. I am, sort of my main concern, my primary objective is to make sure that companies spin out or get created with the right terms and with the right footprint. Because if they don't, that's no good for any of us. It's no good for me. It's no good for my competitors. It's no good for anybody else in the ecosystem. We want to create successful companies. And so I will red flag, and have always said that I will red flag any term sheet going. Largely because people will tell you things are market. Well, do you know what? I'll know whether it's market or not. Or this is normal, or this is the new normal, or this is BBCA standard until it's not. And so those are the sorts of things that, sort of I'm very happy, and my team, it's not just me, it's the entire team, very happy to sort of red flag term sheets. This is where it all went a bit funny when I was trying to do the slides earlier. But anyway, this is me. This is Toby, who's our head of defence, who will be coming and doing a talk hopefully in the new year. And then and then Ash, who heads up our AI, Paddy, who heads up life sciences, Chris Driscoll. So we also have a team of US qualified lawyers based in London. And they're not UK qualified lawyers, as they are very keen to point out to us. And so we have a team of US qualified lawyers based in London. We also have some in Singapore and Hong Kong, which basically means we can also help you with US expansion as well. And some of the again, a lot of this it's not legal. I'm like a lawyer again, it's not legal, but it isn't legal. A lot of it is actually just, we've had a client, they tried to do this, they found this was an issue. Have you thought about it? Do you know, you want to recruit over here. Well, have you thought about, do you know? Would you like an introduction to? It's all of that type of stuff that actually we just get just by the sheer volume of stuff that we do and the geography that we work across. And thank you.